there was always going to be a correction post-COVID, and specifically we're talking about technology and project work, you know, and obviously you're all experienced people in that world, so we're sort of narrowing it down to tech and project. So globally there's been a correction. You talk about efficiencies is what the US tech firms call it. Basically it means redundancies, isn't it, or cost cutting. So efficiencies. But if you look at when COVID happened and we were forced to separate, and we're never going to see each other again, and you know, we're never going to shake each other's hands or whatever it might be, and we're never going to go to an office again, and people weren't recruiting, you know, one business analyst or whatever it was, they were recruiting teams of them. So, and technology was the big winner, and projects. We were a big winner in the pandemic, that's clear. Everything, you know, was, I mean, all businesses are super underpinned by technology now anyway, clearly, at every level. But in COVID and the pandemic, we were the big winners. So my personal view is, this is probably the correction we had to have. You know, it had become a bit too far one way. You know, you need balance, I believe, in you know, in life and business. There were, however, certain sectors that were more resilient within tech and projects. So healthcare, education, engineering, superannuation, we're seeing a lot, you know, there were activity in utilities. Transformation is back as a real hot buzzword, but I would sort of rather, I've been doing this at work for nearly 30 years, but businesses have been transforming and changing since day one. So I just think what happens is we get these sort of buzzwords or labels and we like to push it, but I think transformation has been happening, but maybe companies, a bit like, you don't actually hear digital transformation quite as much as you maybe did 2 years ago, but we move in these sort of cycles, don't we? And I think transformation is very much flavour of the month. We've seen more short-term engagements. So we've still seen contract work, but we've seen it's been a bit less sticky, is what I call it. You know, so if you are contracting, chances are you're probably going to have less 2 to 3 year contract gigs and maybe, you know, 6 months here, a year there, that type of thing. So that's definitely been a trend in the market. Flexible working preferences. We all, well, most of us enjoy flexibility, and I think this is the new norm. But I think it's how you articulate that to people when you're working. I would not lead, we still get it all the time with people saying, is it remote working? It's like, I get that people want flexibility, but you need to sort of have that conversation at the appropriate time. I definitely wouldn't lead with it when you're, you know, looking at new opportunities or interviewing people for your businesses. If the first thing the person says to you is it remote working? It's like, how about we talk about work and why we should work together as humans, and then we can get into the detail. Because again, for people like flexibility, but again, it doesn't need to be, if you're in the office a few days a week, it doesn't need to be 9 to 5. People like start at 7, finish at 1, start later, you know, so I think there's more flexibility, but I think it's how you sort of frame that. If you're in a business in Melbourne, and if you're in an international business and you've got teams all over the world, then, or in other parts of Australia, then clearly there's no point going into an office to be on your own. But, you know, all of you are in leadership roles. So I personally think, and I don't mean to offend anyone, if you are a leader and you're never prepared to go into the office or go to a place and meet your colleagues and build culture and community as a human to human, it's pretty selfish. Where he's talking about AI being horizontal, so basically across every aspect of every business everywhere and improving it. And he likened it to electricity, computing, AI. So it's still in the early stages, but there's no two ways about it. AI will change every aspect of every business in some capacity and give us all opportunities to uplift. But humans have been doing that since we worked in the fields, then we worked in factories, and we worked in offices, or with the horse and car is the famous example with Henry Ford. So cars created a whole plethora of opportunities. So I think as humans, we've been moving up the value chain, which is very valid. People should have the right to disconnect, but I just think there needs to be a balance. Like, if you want flexibility and, you know, the right to disconnect, then that's fine, but you do need to sort of counterbalance that with, you know, doing your bit for the business when you need to do your bit. So it's quite a tricky subject, and people should absolutely be given the right to disconnect. But if I look at, you know, like a smaller business where maybe you've got, I don't know, 20, 25 people, and I know people can opt out of it, but you need to think about if everyone is exercising their right to disconnect all the time, then the business may not be viable. So you do need to get a balance, because people want to have a business where they can participate in and get paid from, but you just need to get a balance. And I think as a society, we're, you know, again, we're trying to figure that out a bit, aren't we? If you look at a job title, you need to contextualize it, because you could be a project manager running a $100 million project, or you could be a project manager running, you know, $100,000 projects. And they're a different type of person that's going to, both are, neither's right or wrong, but it's going to be a different type of character that's going to want to do that type of work. So, but in terms of what won't change, well, I think actually the soft skills, the ability to build relationships, the ability to, you know, to communicate effectively, you know, to inspire people, to sort of lead by example, lead through, you know, lead with your activities, to have those conversations, to, you know, to drive a team forward. I think these are skills that, you know, have stood the test of time and will continue to do so. Security is still obviously super important, still in demand, but not what it was 2 years ago. And I think that's a direct correlation to when they brought in new companies directors legislation, and basically boards could be sent to prison if something went wrong. So all of a sudden the threat of jail has incentivized and really focused the board. So I actually think security is still in demand. It's not what it was. Salaries have come back a bit, but I also think it's a really tough area, because even 5 years, certainly 10 years ago, security was very much in the background. Now you've got to be able to have that kudos from a security point of view, but front up to a board. You know, it's a little bit like architecture in that respect. It's actually very hard to be an amazing CISO. I mean, it's hard to be amazing at anything, but that's because you've got to have such a multifaceted skill set, because it's hard to go to a board and then get back and get into the details. So that would be my observation on security. You know, technology underpins every aspect of every business. So as leaders in technology and projects, and I'm sure you all do this already, but I think in the same way as the best CFOs aren't necessarily the best accountants, the best technology and project leaders need to be business people that are really understanding the technology and the project work. I think that's the sort of the opportunity, continued opportunity for the technology and project leaders of tomorrow to keep accelerating, because it's all about business benefit. I'm pretty cynical about social media. It's a bit of a game, but as I say to people at Granite, you've got to do it authentically. But the reality is, if you don't put anything out there, you're going to get some muppet down the road who tells everyone how good they are and does it in a sincere way, and someone will believe them. So if you're delivering projects or, you know, technology, I think it's well worth, you know, once a week, just post something. And it doesn't need to be like, I tried writing articles a few years ago. I've got an English degree, would you believe it? And no one really read them. So what works for me is I read stuff that I find interesting, and I follow certain people. Like I really like Ray Dalio from an economic point of view, or some of the tech business leaders. Or I tell you what, the McKinsey's free to register, really good content. McKinsey's white paper, you get daily emails. It's well worth subscribing, and it's free. So I tend to now read something that I like, or podcasts. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and then I post it with a couple of comments. So you've got to do it authentically, because you're sharing with your community. But it is important to get your brand out there, because social media is a game. And if you're looking for work or want to keep working, most employers now will look at your LinkedIn. We get people all the time saying, oh, they've got nothing on LinkedIn, or, you know, you know, they can't be any good, they don't do any posting, or they're not even on LinkedIn. So I do think it's, you know, you can lock it all down. You've got to get a bit of a LinkedIn profile, because LinkedIn's really where it's at from a business. We looked at Instagram and Facebook, and it's never really cut it. But LinkedIn is where the action is from a social media business profile point of view. I think we're out of time. We've got some drinks left. Anyone? Thanks for your time and appreciate everyone's input. Hopefully it was some value. And thank you for coming and checking out our new offices. And I wish you all a fantastic day. Thank you.